What's going on, everybody? This is a reaction video to First Impressions with Final Fantasy XIV by Zackrawrr. He is also known as Asmongold, but since this is on his second channel, he's chosen to be called by that. That's how I'm going to refer to him. Let's get into it.
All about my first impressions about Final Fantasy XIV. I just got done playing the game for about, I'm really not sure about how many hours. I think I played it total about 30, 40 hours, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more. And I'm like level 43, almost done with The Realm Reborn.
Damn.
And I wanted to give those real...
He's done quite a bit more than I have.
Actual
In
legitimate
a short time.
First impressions of the game, what I thought was good, what I thought was bad, and everything else in between. Now overall, I want to say that the experience of playing the game and like the meta around it, not just the game, but like me streaming the game, people talking about me playing the game, that shit has blown me away. Holy shit, you guys love this. Like, I didn't expect to get like over 200,000 viewers playing the game on my first day.
Well, of course, man. So, when you think of World of Warcraft, you think of Asmongold, right? You think of the king of WoW, like Ian who, Bobby who gives a fuck. No, you want to know what the hell Asmon's saying, and sometimes McConnell, depending on if he's in a good mood or not. Kidding. Yeah, no, of course people want to see you play the game. You're the king of the biggest MMO, and you have been for a long, long time. And a lot of people do have that, you know, as you said, parasocial relationship. They have a connection to you. They want to see you happy, dude. They want to see you. You know, they want to see you in a different light, doing different things. Especially for some of the longer viewers or you know who come to your streams and stuff. We know that you were having some issues a while back, saying that you felt trapped and you can only play World of Warcraft and you can't do variety stuff because people won't watch and stuff. So to see you in this light having a good time in another game, I think by and large, you know, a lot of your fans who are, you know, not only World of Warcraft fans but are now Asmongold fans are pretty happy to see you in this on this new adventure and having a good time.
That was incredible. Thank you. If you watched that stream, I really appreciate it.
I was there.
And people have come back. They've come back every day to watch.
Hell yeah.
I really do appreciate that too. That is
It's like a fucking unicorn
it's
seeing
so
you in
weird
Final
to me,
Fantasy
right?
XIV.
Because for the longest time, I just streamed WoW. I just played WoW. And now I'm playing Final Fantasy as well. And then, oh shit, now New World's coming out. And then, oh wait a minute, Ashes of Creation Alpha is coming out before
dude,
that.
Ashes.
And it's like, oh my god. You know, when it rains, it pours. That's basically the way that I feel.
It's gonna be fun.
So it's a good thing, by the way.
Yeah.
Rainy day keeps the shower away. So anyway,
run that by me again, bud.
Alpha is coming out before that, and it's like, oh my god. You know, when it rains, it pours. That's basically the way that I feel. So it's a good thing, by the way. Rainy day keeps the shower away.
What the fuck is wrong with you, man? What the fuck is wrong with you? Stop it. Stop. Stop.
So anyway, I want to kind of talk a little bit about the positives and negatives about the game. I think that the worst thing about Final Fantasy XIV is buying the game. And I really mean this. I think that is the genuine worst thing about it. Using their website and trying to figure out oh, well, you have a Square Enix account, but you don't have a Final Fantasy account. Oh, well, you have to buy this, but if you buy it on Steam, then it's different. Like, what the fuck? Like, just make it simple.
Dude, this is the biggest fucking true ever. I tried to play Final Fantasy 3 times before I actually got my account going. Why? Because you had to have like 4 freaking accounts for all of these different games on all these different platforms, and you couldn't just get the fucking game and download it, and if you wanted to do the free trial and transfer it over, it wouldn't work, and then I couldn't get my Steam going, and it's just bullshit trying to fucking play this game. It's terrible.
Okay? Like, one thing that they do right is they make it easy to give
Too
them money,
easy.
Okay?
Too damn easy.
I would love if Square Enix could at least get their shit together a little bit with that, because I'll be honest, it took me 2 or 3 hours to try to figure out how all to do all that stuff. I had to buy one of the games
It
twice.
took me a couple
It's really
tries,
annoying, and just overall, it's confusing, it's contrived, and it's hard to understand. I think for many people, and I think that also, especially with so many people coming into the game now because of the state of WoW and just
buying
in
the game
general,
is
people
awful.
talking about it, and Endwalker coming out in November. There's going to be a lot of people excited to play the game, and what an awful barrier to entry if giving them money is hard to do.
I quit
so I
3
really
times without even installing the game
their payment
because
system
of that,
and the way that works, and just make it easier for people to understand. But other than that, there aren't really a whole lot of like really big negatives. I remember the 2.5 second GCD. This is something that I was kind of
I don't like it.
I was very skeptical that this would be a problem because I assumed that whenever you have a GCD that's quite long like that, there are always going to be abilities like interrupts, like stuns, etc., that have to be split-second abilities that you would use in between that. So it's not really like a 2.5 second GCD. It's like every 2.5 seconds you use a main ability, and then you can use filler abilities inside of that, which is effectively the way the game works. And I think that the combat seems fine. The lack of add-ons is definitely odd for me as a WoW player. It's harder for me to get used to that because as a WoW player, the first...
So, like, I don't even play DPS classes in WoW unless I have Recount. Like, Recount is what makes DPS for me fun. DPSing normally without add-ons in WoW is a terrible experience. I don't like it. I didn't feel good. So, I don't know how it's going to feel in Final Fantasy XIV, if I'm going to like it at all. But yeah, I mean, add-ons are a huge part of WoW. You literally, I can't even fucking play the game without add-ons if I'm a DPS class. I can kind of do it if I'm healing, but it's cumbersome. And then tanking, I don't need anything because you just stand there and get hit.
First thing you do if you're playing a game, it's like, oh, well, I can't play this on your computer because it doesn't have my 15 different add-ons with my 50 different settings and my 30 different weak auras and my 8 different
you need your shit,
like calibrations here. Like, it's very, very complicated. And with Final Fantasy, you're just using the base default UI, and of course there are a few things that you can get that are more advanced, that are apparently add-ons, etc. But I haven't really wasted my time doing that because I just don't really find it necessary. Well, anyway, I want to go through each of the different, tenets of the game and talk about what my first impressions of them were. Now, the first thing is the story. And I think the story is actually very interesting in the way that it's told, because I was thinking a lot about this. And what is the difference, and why is it that Final Fantasy...
I haven't had fun in the story. I haven't had fun in the story because I don't read the fucking quests. Because I never read the quests in any MMO. However, I will say I am more engaged in Final Fantasy XIV's story more so than the other games that I have played, and that's because every so often I'll skip through a bunch of shit, and then there'll be like a cutscene, or there'll be like something that catches my eye in the story. Maybe I'm not texting at that particular moment, and I look over and I see the story, and I'm like, wait, what the fuck happened? Wait, who are they talking about? Like, why did this? What's going on here? And the texts are easy enough to read, and there's not a whole hell of a lot of text. So I'll like read maybe every 5th quest or something, and I'll like get the Cliff Notes version of what's going on. And that is way more than I've done in basically any other game. If it's not voice lined, I'm not paying attention to it. And if it is voice lined, it's a 50% chance I'm gonna skip it. That's just the kind of player I am. But for some reason, I do end up coming back and kind of wanting to know what's going on in Final Fantasy XIV's story for some weird reason. On occasion.
It's easier to tell a story in Final Fantasy, and why does it do that? Because people told me that A Realm Reborn was going to suck. And I'm like, if the questing sucks, there's no way it can be worse than Classic WoW.
It's not.
I was right. It wasn't that bad. It was completely fine.
Yeah.
And I read a few threads about this, and people are talking about, oh man, he's never going to be able to do this 3 quests that are super boring. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, no, boring's not that big a deal.
I've done that for weeks on like 10 levels.
I don't know if I'm like the average WoW player or not, but like boring quests are not a big fucking deal for us coming over. We expect that. If we get entertaining quests, we're like, what the hell? How do I we're still stuck in the point of like, how do I make this as fast as humanly possible? Like, boring, monotonous shit is not something that turns WoW players away at all. Even MMO players in general will grind the hell out of basically anything. I've been playing a power washing simulator game, if that shows you how much grinding the community as a whole can do if they see some sort of progression in it.
Before in Classic WoW, it's been no big deal for me personally as a as you know as an older player, but I can definitely see where the monotony would absolutely set in. But anyway, why is it? Why is
He's
it
also
that
got a
the
stream to keep him
dungeons, why
entertained.
not dungeons, excuse me, why the quests and the story in Final Fantasy, why is it that those things are told in such a more easily digestible format than what they do in WoW? And I think the difference is very simple. It's the difference between a tweet and a twit longer. And WoW tells their story in twit longers, and Final Fantasy tells their stories in tweets. Basically, what I mean by that is that whenever you are listening to the Final Fantasy dialogue, it is giving you information in about this much of a little box,
Bite-sized
right?
information.
Meanwhile, whenever you do WoW, it's this much of a box.
I haven't read a question
you
in
read
a
the
long
first
time.
2 lines, and you're like, okay, what's the objective? But in Final Fantasy, because many times the information is very short and it's presented to you in very bite-sized formats, it makes it easier to digest for the user, and
Sure.
I think that it also makes it easier for people to understand the story because it's being given to them.
Even people who don't give a fuck will come back and at least read the Cliff Notes version of the story every couple quests. Try and figure out who the hell this guy is and why you're trying to beat his ass. Just because it only takes like 10 seconds and then you're caught back up, which is nice. It's definitely more of a draw than any other kind of MMO that I've ever played, where if I read more than like a sentence, I'm done. I'm done. Fucking move on. Where's my next objective? Who do I need to go kill?
In these very specific increments. And I think also creating the dialogues between the different characters and the in-game cutscenes does give people a better way to personify who those characters are and give a better idea of who's saying what and who feels what way. So I do think it really matters to do that, and in Final Fantasy I really do feel that they've done a very good job with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, another element with this, so storytelling overall I think that it is great. I like the storytelling.
Storytelling is good. Story's been kind of meh.
I think is very interesting, and this is something that probably one of the main reasons why I wanted to make this video is to share this idea that I've had, is that I believe that storytelling is actually one of the reasons why Final Fantasy doesn't have as much of a quote toxic community as World.
That's kind of a stretch. I don't know about that one. Let's see what he has to say, but the idea that storytelling is going to affect how your players act seems weird.
Warcraft. And I don't necessarily think this is maybe entirely true in all ways, but I want to draw a distinction between the way that Final Fantasy deals with antagonists versus the way that World of Warcraft deals with antagonists.
Sure.
Almost every single time in Final Fantasy, especially in the early quests, that you have an antagonist, there is a point where the antagonist comes to a realization that they have done something wrong.
Which is boring.
After that, there is generally a point of mercy where people think, oh, well, you know, he gets it, he understands, we're going to give him a second chance.
Which is weak.
So in so many cases in Final Fantasy, there is a element of forgiveness. There is an element of redemption. Whereas in World of Warcraft, there is an element of retribution and execution much more often than there is. And I think that just telling a narrative in the way that you create the idea that people are, you know, redeemable, and you have somebody does something really bad.
Okay, so I think I see what's going on here. I think I see what Mr. Zackrawrr is getting to. Basically, he's saying that because you log on into this social space with these particular, groups of people and their story that's been fed to you, that you've kept up with, bite-sized information, so you're kind of engaged on who's doing what, and you can kind of remember maybe some characters or whatever, but your brain, when it enters this psychological space, interacting it with, from the point of view of this character, you've always been taught that people are redeemable, to act with compassion, to seek to strengthen the bonds with each other, versus screwing each other over and basically taking what you can in the World of Warcraft realm. So you're conditioned socially. You got that mental connection of, when I'm playing this game, this is how most interactions, regardless if they're human or if they're game related, this is how most of these interactions have gone in the past. And so your brain has already made those connections of, possibly this is how I need to act, because your brain's going to try and optimize itself to the actual circumstances that it's in most cases. And I think that probably another element of this is whenever people are in situations, like that they've been socially conditioned for, people will immediately know what type of group they belong in, right? They will know if they are inherently a toxic player, or if they're inherently a player that works together. I am inherently a little toxic. But I think that probably the people who play Final Fantasy XIV and get with these quests and these conditions probably are going to appeal to it much more, and the slightly toxicer players are going to get in this condition and potentially be less toxic than they would be normally. So I don't think that it's a stretch anymore. I think that he's got a valid point in the whole idea of social conditioning, and potentially the ideas, the imprints that you get from your experiences when you log on to the world, expecting a certain type of interaction.
Everybody's really mad at them, and they're given forgiveness. I think that, in a very, very subtle way, sets the tone for interactions in the game.
Yeah.
And I think, in a way, that does kind of create a paradigm in which to interact with each other in the game. And I think that having that narrative...
So a paradigm is the way in which a person sees the world, and that's what I was talking about when it comes to when you're logged into that game, seeing the world through your character's eyes, in your way, in which the way you interact through the world, having these impressions put onto your character in these situations throughout the game would help shape that paradigm.
Where players are not just instantly executed for doing something wrong, or most quest lines do not end in the person that's causing the trouble being put in jail or destroyed or killed or something like that.
Right.
I think the end result of that is a more understanding player base, because they've been conditioned to feel that way through the narratives in the game. And I find it very interesting that that's the case. And I've seen that more and more and more, because whenever I was first questing, it's like, oh, well, this guy's doing some stupid shit. Man, all right, I can't wait to kill him at the end of it. And then at the end of it, they just give him a pat on the back and they say, listen, man, we knew you were misunderstood. Hopefully you can get your shit back together. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I thought we were going to take him to the back of the barn and shoot him.
Yep.
And it doesn't even happen. And I think it's a very subtle, and it's a very removed way of thinking about things, especially whenever you're taking
it's kind of
narrative decisions in the story and comparing them to player behavior. But I do think that it does rub off in a very specific way, especially with how important many of the players in Final Fantasy view the story. So let's go ahead and talk about combat. I actually think combat it's about the same, really. I think WoW has great combat. That's really
WoW
true.
has better combat, in my opinion.
Really well-designed combat. It's extremely responsive. When you hit a button,
I'm low level, so I don't know.
And there's no delay at all about it. And I think that even some of the most staunch Blizzard dislikers, let's just say, not haters, just dislikers, some of the most staunch Blizzard dislikers they're going to have to admit that, like, Blizzard and World of Warcraft is an extremely responsive game, unless you have more than 5 players in an area. But other than that, if you're just playing with a few other people, it is extremely responsive. When you hit a button, your character does something immediately. And I think that is one element of Blizzard quality that has actually stood the test of time.
Absolutely.
So Final Fantasy, I think, is close to that. It definitely is. But especially with like off GCD abilities like interrupts and stuns, I don't think that they have the same responsiveness that World of Warcraft does.
Definitely not.
But that could also just be me not
close.
really understanding it quite as well. I think I'll probably have to give you guys an update on that once I hit level 80. Now, in terms of goals in the game, my goals in Final Fantasy, I think that some people before I started playing the game did not believe this, but my goals in Final Fantasy are to clear ultimate fights. I'm not planning on hitting level 80 and then
I'm
quitting
not
the
familiar
game.
with Ultimate
And I
Fights.
think more and more, the more that I know life, the worst parts of the questing experience, and still somehow manage to enjoy them, the more that some of my more fervent detractors will have to come to the realization that that might actually happen. So I'm very excited about that. Honestly, I've been watching some of the
Fervent detractors. I like that. Instead of just calling them assholes. That's nice. It's a nice touch. Make them feel special.
fights just on different people's channels, etc. And I am so excited to do the raids. I think they're so cool. And it's the thing is with me and WoW is
So
like
the
I used
Ultimate
to
Fights
really
raids?
love to raid.
That's what they are?
And the worst part about raiding for me is the other people, right?
Yeah.
Like I love doing the fights, but whenever I've got Billy the dipshit who just keeps standing in the fire,
Right.
and I'm spending 3 hours of my day, 3 days a week, waiting on Billy to figure out that the fire's hot, I'm not necessarily having a good time.
Yeah.
So that's been a big problem that I've had with WoW rating. And Final Fantasy, you have less people in Ultimates. I think it's 8 people instead of 20 in Mythics. So hopefully we can be a little bit more.
So 8 people, huh? I don't know if I like that or not. I mean, I guess so. Because it'd be easier in case, like, you're going to be able to coordinate with 8 people a lot more. You're going to be able to have everybody get online better. You won't have to do as much farming for consumables. You won't have to be doing as much BOE farming or buying BOEs for your guild mates. Yeah, that could work. 8 people. I assume, what, 1 tank, 2 healers, 5 DPS? That sounds about right. It just means that nobody can fuck up their job, but also it means that because each person has more individual responsibility in order to get to an ultimate fight status, which is, I guess, a mythic level equivalent, you're gonna have to do your job to a really high skill level. So you're going to be more invested. Each person is more invested. You probably won't have people getting drunk or getting high in your raids because each person has a level of their own responsibility. I probably just said the stupidest thing, saying that people wouldn't get drunk or high in World of Warcraft or MMO raids in particular. But maybe that's my thinking. I mean, we'd be completely off base on that.
More specific in who we're going to invite in and who we're going to let in. And I really am actually looking forward to progressing through the mythic system, or not mythic, the ultimate and savage and I think extreme systems for some of the older fights in Final Fantasy. Like, this is something that I'm genuinely excited about and
it sounds
genuinely
cool.
looking forward to. And it's not even really about the armor. Like, the armor is cool.
I really like the idea that there could be 1 tank, but then how do you do tank mechanics? There's no tank, there's no taunt swamping, so like, you actually have to do real mechanics? How would you ever find a tank?
And don't get me wrong, like we're definitely going to be talking about the armor a little bit here, but it's mostly just about being able to
I just did the
fights.
video on
I feel
the
like
armor.
many of the fights in Final Fantasy have
It was
not
cool.
really challenged me, I feel like, as a player.
Some
And
of it
so
was
I'm
cool, some
really
of it was kind of
waiting to get
trash.
to that point where I'm like, fuck, okay, this is actually hard. And I'm not, the greatest player ever, so I think that it will probably happen at a certain point, probably soon. Other than that, I think mounts are definitely very interesting in Final Fantasy,
Yeah,
considering
agreed.
the fact that all of them can fly, and it's not just the
That's weird.
the ones with wings. There is literally an elephant that flies.
Dumbo!
So this is a little bit. It is a little bit
He fly with
silly
his
to me.
ears?
I'm going to be honest with you. It is a little bit silly to me, but it's one of those things you don't really think about a whole lot. I don't really give a shit that much. It was something that I thought would be more annoying than it was, and the reason why I think it's not that annoying is Final Fantasy is like, it's basically the highest form of fantasy fiction that there is. So you have
That's
like
kinda
these
like-
giant airships.
That's kind of one thing I've always kind of hated about Final Fantasy, and one of the reasons why I haven't played it as much as I, or played it as soon as I thought I was, because I had a group that went over to Final Fantasy a while ago, really good guys, and I didn't go with them because, I don't know, just the idea that everything is so over the top is kind of annoying.
These giant monsters with metallic metal swords that are coming out, and they're like katanas, and there's fire coming off of them. And then you see an elephant flying around, and it's like, yeah, of course the elephant's flying. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So in the scope of Final Fantasy, elephants literally flying, pigs flying, is actually not that crazy at all. So I'm not really worried about that too much. Then in terms of the community has been, you guys know, my community experiences in Final Fantasy have been very colorful, and I there has been a lot of people that have been a little bit annoying, but shout out to Square Enix. They've actually done a good job at trying to at least try.
I never thought that they would do that. I never thought they would ban people and get people off his screen. Like, in my mind, there was no chance. I didn't even know I was wasting this time trying to get them, trying to put in tickets. Like, nothing was going to happen. And then they did, and I was like, that's insane.
Try to give me as much of a normal experience as possible. There were a number of people trying to grief me and just stream snipe me and just generally be annoying as possible, like try to get on the screen and cover up as much of my screen as possible so I couldn't see anything. And they did do a good job. The GMs did a great job at kind of taking care of those people.
Yeah, that was
them
cool.
in timeout, which is something that I was very, very glad about, and something that, in my opinion, should happen in all games. And either way,
good luck with that.
Community has been, I think, completely fine. I think Final Fantasy definitely it's hit the mark of being that place that you can log in and hang out in. And I think that's one thing
it seems
that a
real
lot
chill.
of the more casual MMORPG players definitely feel at home with, because they can log in, hang out with their friends, maybe do a quest,
I don't feel pressured.
maybe do a dungeon or something like that, and there's not as much of high stakes with it. And I think that high stakes is another element. This is probably the last thing that I want to talk about with the Final Fantasy First Impressions, is high stakes is definitely it's a spectrum. And so let's talk about really, really, really high stakes. Let's talk about Classic WoW with full world buffs.
Yep.
If you wipe the raid in Classic WoW with full world buffs,
fucking G-kicked.
People
get him the fuck out of here.
Pissed. They're furious.
Yeah.
Because they spent hours preparing for this. And especially before the Chrono Boon displacers.
You're fucking done,
They
dude.
had to log off all week
done.
to make sure that they didn't lose these buffs so they could do the raid the following Tuesday. And then finally they get to the raid and somebody fucks it up and they lose all of their work that they've been looking forward to for the entire week.
Yep.
So you have that much loss and you can lose that much.
And that's why people in Classic had these fucking huge egos on their head, at least in my opinion, of like, oh, Classic was so hard, Classic was this, the Classic was that. It's because, no, the content was fucking dog shit easy. But if you fucked it up, you were gone. So you had to have people that would never, ever, 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 ever screw up something that was super easy to do. Because it didn't matter that it was super easy, because if you screwed it up, you screwed it up for everybody. For the entire week, you were gone.
You get massive toxicity. You have people that get really, really angry about that.
You can never make a mistake.
Lose so much through wiping.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think a little bit of a lesser extent here, let's talk about Mythic Plus. Why is Mythic Plus a little bit more toxic
you lose your key.
than, let's say, Dungeons in Final Fantasy? It's very simple. Because if you fuck up a dungeon in Final Fantasy, you just get somebody else in the group and it's not a big deal. But if you fuck up a Mythic Plus, you lose your key and it gets depleted.
Fucking
so the
sucks.
element of scarcity, the element of loss is a little bit more prevalent in World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
And because of that, that scarcity creates pressure and that pressure creates toxicity. And I think Final Fantasy takes the pressure off in a lot of those cases and doesn't create those lose conditions that are so punishing for players that it makes them resent each other.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very, very impactful thing.
There are like multiple groups in Mythic Plus for like over 15 keys that if you haven't done a 16, you don't get in time, you don't get in the 15 group, which is fucking ridiculous.
And I actually think that Blizzard should look at that and try to create more challenging boss fights, and rather than creating more punishing boss fights. I'd rather be challenged than punished.
Agreed.
I guess that's kind of a good way to look at it, but of course there's a lot more to it as well. But anyway, my experience overall with the game has actually been very good. I've had fun with it. I've enjoyed it. My stream has enjoyed it. And it's a great feeling as a streamer. I'm sure you guys, if you stream before, you'd know this. But even if you haven't, it's very easy to relate to this or understand this. That it's a great feeling that you get involved with a game and you really like playing a game. And it turns out that your stream really likes watching it. There's no weird thing where you're playing this game that you don't want to and you're doing it because of your stream. No, or it's no thing where you're, playing this game that you do want to, and your stream's hating it and they're complaining about it. And I think it's great. I'm really happy about it. And I've also, one thing that's really been heartening for me, and and very positively uplifting is the fact that I've had a lot of people that are, they're first time Final Fantasy viewers, and they're willing to try out, and give my WoW content a chance.
That's
Watch a
cool.
transmog
That's
mod,
really
or,
cool. Dude, I bet the Final Fantasy guys are gonna be absolutely over the moon for transmog shit.
watch a new dungeon,
Probably starting a whole new trend over there.
and just try to enjoy the content and appreciate the genre of MMOs for what it has to be, rather than the tribalism that I think has actually just made it's made the
everything
entire
shitty, dude.
space worse. It's made the community worse as a whole. And I think one of my main goals with all of this is to try to give people the perspective that you can love multiple games, you can have fun in multiple games, and you can appreciate multiple games. It doesn't necessarily have to be a zero-sum environment. And I've really enjoyed playing this other game. It's been super fun for me. I'm super excited for Ashes of Creation. I'm even excited about other games like Palia and Crowfall too, and as well as like other RPGs too. I think that playing Final Fantasy has given me a lot of confidence with streaming, and I'm very glad that it's gone so
well. I like
well.
that
And
he's
I
got
look forward to doing
confidence.
other games similar to that as well in the future. So I want to say thank you guys, everybody who's been so supportive and everything.
Aww.
I've really enjoyed playing the game, and also I look forward to continuing playing as well. And so overall, it's been a pretty fun experience. It's been more fun than I had expected, and I've actually just enjoyed myself. It's really just that simple. So anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I've got. Thank you very much for watching. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on about it. I know a lot of people have talked to me about it already, but I wanted to make a video and just kind of share a little bit more of a expanded view of how I felt about the game. So
Awesome.
anyway, guys, overall,
Cool.
TLDR, game good. Thank you all very much for watching. Really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Thank you for making this video, man. We have really enjoyed it. The community, people I've been talking to, we're very, very curious to see how Final Fantasy carries on for you in the future, along with WoW and any other games you want to play. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. We like your content, and I think that you deserve a lot of credit in kind of prepping your stream and kind of letting your community know, like, hey, I'm interested in doing this other thing. I'm going to be doing this other thing. Here's how I'm going to be doing it, and kind of setting some ground rules. I saw a video the other day where you were like, hey, permaban for anybody who bitches about viewers being dropped because you're not playing Final Fantasy or because you're not playing WoW or whatever. I think setting guidelines for us and kind of setting things up really helped create a positive experience and let everyone know exactly what was going to happen and what was going to happen. I think you're wonderful at what you do, and I appreciate all the content and your time today. So everybody else, peace. This is Zackrawrr. I hope you have a great day.